been a week. Had a fourth. Did you have your good Fourth of July, Jake? I assume you had some sort of good Fourth of July stuff going on.
Yeah, definitely a different one than usual for me. I was out in the national parks. I've never done a national park trip
Oh,
before,
that's
but
fun.
yes, it was very good. And I'll use this as my excuse to plug Amtrak. For those that don't know, I had a ridiculous journey to the West and back simply because I did not want to pay what was demanded for a flight to the, rural Pacific Northwest Rocky Mountain
Not cheap.
area. And it involved me and my partner. She and I took the Amtrak from where we were at to Seattle, and did that overnight. That was great. Honestly, I was shocked, and this is somebody who really likes trains. I mean, anyone who's listened to this podcast knows that we talk a lot about things that move and infrastructure. I like both of those things. Had never done it before.
We're gonna hit the Jake triumvirate. We're gonna hit the Jake triumvirate in this episode of trains, history, and Georgia Tech, all in the same episode here.
Well, I'll find a way to wedge Chicago in at the very end.
He's wearing he's wearing a Chicago Red Stars shirt.
No, it's actually a Cubs City Connect T-shirt.
That's the Wrigleyville T-shirt.
Yeah, it's the navy one was the actual jersey,
right?
But
that's
this
what
is
threw me
the
off.
Chicago.
The sky blue.
It's the Chicago flag color, and the red star is the city. See, this is what happens when your city has a flag that is easily identifiable, as the sports teams can use it in order to brand.
You're
right. Atlanta.
Where's our flag? Anyways,
Akshay has one in his apartment, honestly, but I think
patriotic man.
But anyways, great fourth. Hope yours was good as well. And to all of our listeners, I think they can excuse us being off for the holiday week. But we do have plenty to talk about today.
We do. Not doing this for a week resulted in more things. Although I would say most of the things we're talking about happened after the 4th anyway, so I think we're all right. A number of these things happened today. This is Signs of the Southland. 174. No Akshay today. Busy with work and stuff, so he's a busy man. We're going to start with, I think, our first ever London-based segment that we've ever done. At least that I've ever done in the year I've been here. I don't know if y'all have brought up anything London-related.
I don't think we have. Maybe we talked about Yankees-Red Sox back in 2019.
It's a hell of a game.
We've really had no excuse to talk about the Brits. I'm sorry to any Brits out there.
Yeah,
who
hell of a game.
Yeah,
that Yankees-Red Sox game was insane. But Chris Eubanks, class of... What year was he class of? Was he 17, 16?
I believe he's 18. He may be class of 2017. Fall 2017, I believe, was the last he played for men's tennis. Okay. I just don't know if he graduated December or if it was the next spring.
Something in there. Okay, that makes sense. Chris Eubanks, who has been on the ATP tour, he's been kind of running the challenger circuit. He never made a Wimbledon field until this year after he won in Mallorca. Which is one of the tune-up tournaments for one of the tune-up tournaments for Wimbledon. He is through to the quarterfinals of Wimbledon. He beat Thiago Monteiro in the first round, Cameron Norrie in the second round, which that was a big match because Norrie was on the 12th seed and it was a Brit, so that's always just a tough time to play.
He was the number one Brit too. That's why they're playing on the big court.
Yeah, he's played center court for that, and then he had an arguably easier match against Chris O'Connell, but that match still went, that they went to tie breaks in every set because Eubanks just that kind of guy, and then had to face one of the current titans of tennis in Stefanos Tsitsipas today, who is the number 5 seed in the tournament and 5th ranked in the world, and just a guy that. There was no clear expectation Chris was going to win this. He was on an eight match winning streak going into the match, so he at least had a lot of good momentum on his side. But Tsitsipas is one of those bulwarks of men's tennis right now that is very hard to get around. And sure enough, this man, after losing the first set 3-6, came around, won a tiebreak, then lost another set 3-6, and then got a break late in the 4th set to win that set. Didn't lose it, and then there was 3 breaks total in the 5th set. Eubanks initially broke him, and then Tsitsipas broke right back, and then Eubanks broke right back again to flip it back on him, and then held serve his last 2 service games and beat him 6-4, which was absolutely insane. Tsitsipas did not have his best day, and I think at the end also Eubanks was it got a little dicey at the end there. He had to save 2 more break points when he was up 5-4 to avoid possibly another tie break, and he got it done. Our man is into the round of six, into the quarterfinals. He's got an even harder match next because this is how major tennis works. He's going to face Daniil Medvedev, the Russian, who is insanely good, has probably a better mover than Tsitsipas is. So Chris's serve was what's helping him, and he is like described like he's a server. That's how he knows that's his bread and butter. So he's going to need to be on point for this, and he's now at a nine match win streak. And so that's what this is the most popular man of Georgia Tech right now, and probably will be for the next week.
Well, and I gotta say, we'll talk a little bit more about this a little bit later down the podcast. But between Chris Eubanks, who has had just a phenomenal week, and Georgia Tech golf, I think this is kind of the best. At least me personally, I've been feeling about Tech sports in just a minute. So that's been good, even with some, I guess, kind of disappointing baseball and softball results in the spring. It's still good to see the golf boys and Chris Eubanks really in the national spotlight in a way I don't think we've seen recently.
No,
I do
not
want
at
to
all.
note that Chris is on a bit of a trending up in general. He had never made Roland Garros before this year. This is his first main draw at Wimbledon. And if you go back to 2022 in the fall, he made the second round of the US Open, which is the first time he made it past the first it was his fourth US Open appearance. And he had also appeared in the Australian Open in 2019 and 2020. But anyways, since appearing in the US Open 2022, he has made the Australian, Roland Garros, and now Wimbledon, which means 4 majors in a row. And in 3 of the 4, he's also made it past the first round. So that's going in his favor too.
Yeah, big upside here. I think he's 26, 27 years old right now, which for tennis is not old because all of the best players, as in the 3 best guys, Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal, won most of their majors after they were this age, anyways. So hopefully, at the very least, this gets him into probably the U.S. Open, anyways, because his ranking's going to shoot up after this, regardless of if he loses to Medvedev in the next round. So he's in a very nice spot here. If you don't know how the point system works in tennis, basically, the number of points you generate, it's a rolling gear, basically. So it's not like the PGA Tour where it resets at the end of the year. It's just however many points you have accumulated over since the last time that tournament was played. So he will hold this. So however many points he gets from Wimbledon, which is a lot because it's a major, he will hold that number of points until the next Wimbledon, along with everything else he's accumulated. So this is, if there is a way to boost up your ranking and hold it for a while, it's to do well in a major. And so this is huge for his career.
I will say, he does, according to the IBM AI draw analysis on the Wimbledon website, have the first most difficult draw compared to other players left in the field.
Sure.
But it kind of makes sense. He's unseeded. So,
being unseeded doesn't help. He's got Medvedev there, which is arguably, outside of, he's got to face Medvedev. He's got to play 2 of, if not all of Medvedev, Alcaraz, and Djokovic. So that, that's for today's tennis with who's currently available is, that's not a fun gauntlet, but he has played Medvedev one time. So we'll see. Moving on from that, softball did have a new recruit they announced recently, Brianna Condon from South Carolina. She's an incoming sophomore. We're out of COVID weird regulation stuff, so she is a sophomore with an actual 3 years of eligibility left. As of now, at least, this was her free transfer. She's a Woodstock, Georgia native. Only played a few games, but with just the various things. A lot of people departing from the softball team. 6 people graduate or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so good to get another arm there. Our signing class, I don't think we recapped this. They were ranked 30th by extra inning softball last fall when I was done, when they finished recruiting for them. That included a pitcher. By 30th, seems great in the national sense, but there's a lot of ACC teams probably ahead of us there. I haven't done the checking, but considering how good the ACC is, 30th, it's like 30 out of like 45, like probably good teams that could be fighting for good spots in the tournament. So that is all I have there. On the other side of what is it, Fowler at Rush Chandler. Today was day 2 of the MLB draft. There was no jackets picked in day 1, which was just round 1. I only did one round today. Today's been more. 3 jackets were picked today. Christian Campbell got picked in the 2nd round by the Boston Red Sox. Jake DeLeo got drafted by the Miami Marlins in the 6th round. And then Jackson Finley, the 2A guy, got drafted by the Athletics in the 8th round. I forgot I wrote for myself. Who knows if Jackson Finley will be playing in Oakland, but if he makes it to the big leagues by the time he would make it to the big leagues, because they may be in Vegas, they may be in Oakland. Who the heck knows? He'll probably get more fans if he makes it to AAA than he does in the majors if they're still in Oakland, though, which is kind of sad still. But so those guys got taken. I assume they'll sign. I think Finley slots for like $330,000. So I no reason to think why they wouldn't want to sign. All of last year's group signed, so the precedent's there. So we'll see how that goes. See if they come back. See if they don't. Probably will not come back. There was my expectation there if they're drafted day 2. Anything there to add, or we're good there?
Not too much. I believe it is also worth noting that oh my gosh, I want to get the position right. Pete from the signing class went to Seattle as well.
Gotcha. Yep. And then lastly, before we get to our big topic of the day, which is a lot of football stuff, we haven't done a football episode in way too long. Julia Bergman's got a professional team now. Our volleyball superstar who's been doing Nations League play with Brazil is now signed for Turk Ava Yolari SK. I apologize for broken Turkish turned into English. But basically, she's going to be playing in Istanbul for her professional career starting out this fall. So she's got her club. She's in a Turkey is a volleyball hotbed. If you listen to one of our episodes a while back, we do have a very good Turkish player coming in this year as an incoming freshman as well. And they all those various soccer pro club teams have volleyball usually if they have soccer as well. So she's gonna be. Hopefully this will be a good situation. I may go ask the team and see if get more educated about what this actually means. If she's on a good team or if she's not, I don't know. But either way, she's dead. She mentioned in my interview with her earlier this year that she kind of had to leave because she had pro opportunities that she just couldn't pass up on. So I'm assuming, guardedly assuming, that this is probably one of those opportunities that was presented to her in some form or fashion a while back, and now is able to make it official. So with that, we're going to welcome Joey Weaver on, who was the former site manager of this whole shebang, right?
Yeah, Joey and Ben and Cade Lawson, they ran the show. Former podcast co-host Cade Lawson. Don't want to.
Oh yes. So we're going to talk about football in about 5 seconds. All right, we got Joey Weaver with us. Let's dive straight into the big news of the week. It was football related. It was field related. It was not player related though. Chad Bishop and Ken Segura at the AJC they broke that the naming rights for historic Grant Field are possibly up for sale, and Hyundai seems to be the interested buyer here. They did clarify that Bobby Dodd Stadium, that portion of the name is to be kept. And most of us refer to it as Bobby Dodd Stadium, but we know the whole name is Bobby Dodd Stadium at historic Grant Field. There's some history behind Grant Field, which we mentioned in our little write-up. We'll probably run into it here for a second as well. But we just want to mention, let's get our feelings here, because Grant Field is it's been around longer than any of us and any of our grandparents probably have been alive at this point too. So talk about the things that make Tech old. Grant Field is one of those things that makes Tech old and very traditional in the college football sense. And to have a car maker come in, and at least it's a car maker, because we at least have a car as a mascot. So it's better than other alternatives, I guess. But do we have internal feelings about this at all?
Before we get into the feelings, I do want to note that Ford Field did not let the wreck drive out in front of the team at the Quick Lane Bowl. So do with that information. Do with that information as you will. No one has sworn me to secrecy on that. So Hyundai, we're still driving a Ford out. That's a non-negotiable. That is extremely non-negotiable.
Yeah. I was gonna say I look forward to the team entrance led by the 1930 Ford Model A Sport Coupe, brought to you by Hyundai.
Yes,
something like that.
It really rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
I think they could swap the historic for a Hyundai and keep the Grant Field. Full disclosure, I'm not related to John Grant, who's the benefactor of the field. He named it in honor of his son Hugh Grant, who died at the age of 11. So this seems really dirty in that regard. Just kind of, it's been 110 years. We can, sorry, guy who donated this land and helped us build this, and who was a trustee on the board of trustees as well, to just kind of be like, getting rid of it altogether. But I mean, we've had a Russ Chandler Stadium at McNeese Baseball Park type situation on this building for 35 years. So, I mean, clunkiness is not a thing. People who grew up calling it Grant Field are going to continue to call it Grant Field. People who grew up calling it Bobby Dodd Stadium are going to continue to call it Bobby Dodd Stadium. It's more of a symbolic thing than anything. I don't know. I just feel like there's a way it could have been maybe compromised a little, because I mean, it's a name that's been on the stadium for
we don't know.
years.
We don't know for sure if it's going to be
Yeah.
at Hyundai Field
sure.
or at Hyundai Historic Grant Field or Historic Grant Field presented by Hyundai. Like the actual name, we don't know what it'll be. We just know the Grant part of it is up in the air at the moment. But you make a good point. Like, you never know. Like, could we get Bobby Dodd Stadium at Hyundai Russ Chandler Stadium at Hyundai?
Jack, I've completely.
There's so many names. I don't know. Surely Hyundai Milborn Field. What are we gonna get?
Put it this way, though: if Hyundai's putting their name on the field, I would be surprised if it's not literally on the field.
Yeah.
So that'll be a new thing to be looking at, when you're watching a game this fall.
Right.
It's money. I mean, we need money, right?
Yeah. There's no way this isn't a multi-million-dollar deal in some form or fashion, because this is talk about one of the most expensive field naming rights in college football. When you bake the tradition into it and how long the name's been there, like, it has to be.
In the heart of Midtown Atlanta, how much fantastic B-roll are they going to get out of saying, like,
they're probably going to have some exterior signage on the main intersection of Techwood and North Ave. I don't know if they're going to change because the Coca-Cola has the main signage in the stadium above the scoreboards. I don't know if that's up for grabs or how that's going to go down. I would assume if they're going to do that, they're going to start constructing that soon, because you got to build over the building that's right there, which I'm forgetting the name of it, where Institute Communications. Wardlaw, yes, where Institute Communications used to be. So it's interesting. I assume there has to be plenty of on-field, to have plenty of signage, digital signage, maybe a permanent one. Who knows?
Joey, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you know the other Georgia Tech venue that has had a corporate naming sponsor off the top of your head?
A corporate named sponsor. So it was pointed out earlier today, and I hadn't really thought about this, but we used to have the Alexander Memorial Coliseum that is now the McCamish Pavilion, but that's just named after the McCamish family.
Yes.
Are we talking about a sports venue here?
You are
or the Ford building? Is that what we're talking about?
You're real close. It's Alexander Memorial Coliseum, but they received a gift to help fund the Olympic renovation from a specific donor, and was known as the Alexander Memorial Coliseum at the McDonald's Center from 1996 through 2005.
Interesting.
Oh, I didn't realize we were talking about history. I thought that was current. Okay, cool.
Oh, no. Yeah.
I was like, what am I forgetting?
Interesting. I do wonder on the general just naming everything, if this breaks a dam that maybe just the athletics department just didn't consider all that hard or didn't pursue as much, because there's like multiple courts at the outdoor tennis area that don't have benefactor names. Like there's the Matt Kuchar court and stuff like that. I could assume the track could maybe get something if they want to do baseball. They could. That's one of the best, it's just one of the best pure baseball fields in college baseball. And there's always great games there every year because of who we get to come. So,
you ask how we feel about the name change, though. Like, the first thing that I think about is that this is a school that, I've only ever gone to one college, truthfully. So like, I can't really speak for all the rest of them, but like this one seems like it, we really appreciate our traditions and our long-standing, the things that we've done for a long, long time, right? Like this is a stadium that's had the same name, and the field's been named the same thing for how many decades now, right? You show up to orientation, and we're talking about Stumpy's Bear, and we're talking about John Heisman coaching back in the 1910s, right? Like, we celebrate these things that have lasted for a long, long time. So like, if you're upset about it, like I kind of get it that this is straying from tradition. It's like we're getting away from something we've called this for decades in the sake of money. But that's just it. It's like, we need the money.
We do.
Like, we are falling further and further down a hole of being unable to compete. And it's like, I think the first thing that J-Bat should be charged with as AD is like, let's go find some more revenue streams. Let's find ways to add to the bottom line so we can stay competitive with everyone we're supposed to be competing with.
it's it with no money and no change, nothing's going to change about the program. And pretty soon, we talk about, to your point, old things, Olympic history, right? We see that as, it's not that, at least when I was a freshman, it wasn't that far away. It's like a quarter century ago. But like when I toured WashU in St. Louis, like they were still talking about their Olympics, and those were in 1904. And we're going to get to the point where we're starting to sound like a lot more like WashU than
right.
Georgetown.
Right.
We just built this pool for the Olympics.
Right.
The tradition will become history, period, and not something that's living if we don't do something about it. And that's where I'm trying to be pragmatic. Because I mean, I'm a history guy, and I have a player piano roll of the fight song on my bookshelf in the other room. Like, I get it, right? But
I do like how it seems like the general response that I've seen from people is like they kind of get it too. Like there isn't a heavy emotional aspect to this. They're just like, well, that sucks that it's this thing of all things, but it is one of the most valuable things you have, and given our current situation, some valuable things got to go. I mean, it's the same thing if anyone that comes into money troubles in any form or fashion, whether it's business, personal, whatever, some valuable things got to get sacrificed at points to stay afloat and in our case, be competitive, which is a different aspect. Survival is a goal, but also being competitive is the real goal here. And so that's going to do it. So hopefully, I don't know. We don't know what immediately this the money turns into. I assume maybe some of it goes to Edge. I hope some of it goes to like raising coaches' salaries. I know the next sport needs to happen. Maybe that's a part of the way that they find some funding there. Who the heck knows? All that's to be seen. Nothing's been announced formally by Georgia Tech. There's just been the report by the AJC, but nothing's been refuted on that front either. So
at least it's a normal, reputable company, right? It's not a crypto scam, and it sounds like
Grant
Hyundai's
Field
trying to
presented
work
by
with, like,
FTX
engineering. Yeah, like,
and
no. And it's cool. And
Arthur Anderson.
I forgot to mention as well, like Hyundai's building a plant right outside of Charleston, on the Georgia side though. So gaining favor with people in Georgia to maybe go work at their plant, being engineers at their plant is like a very good strategy for Hyundai as a whole. So investing in a spot that's vulnerable for Tech right now, it's a good little strategy by them. So
sometimes I get the impression Tech has a bigger alumni base in Savannah than in Atlanta too, so that doesn't hurt.
No, it doesn't. So, and we have a tiny campus thing down there, don't we? Like right there, I think we have a building out there at least.
Or do they still?
Is it still officially open?
I have no idea. I don't know anyone.
I haven't heard anything from them in a long time.
I don't know anyone that goes there, so maybe not. So we'll see. Before we get into why is Jake away from his computer? Get back to the microphone, Jake.
I dropped my lacrosse ball. Sorry, I'm a fidgeter, guys.
Okay.
It's just my thing.
Jack, you can't podcast without your lacrosse ball.
I guess I've got my little whale that I put on my finger, which no one can see because this is an audio measure. I stole this from the technique office. Anyways, Jake, you had a thing before we get into recruiting?
Yes, I did. I did want to bring Joey kind of on, not just to talk about football recruits, because all three of us just, we follow all of our stars, as anyone who knows this podcast knows. I say very sarcastically. But I originally reached out because you were saying some stuff that really resonated with me about just how you and Mike and producer Scott were feeling about the season, how you're feeling about football, how it relates to Georgia Tech. Obviously, they're Virginia Tech guys. But 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, I was feeling the burnout too. So I pinged you. And you don't have to say everything's sunshine and daisies now, but how are we feeling going into what you've seen out of Key in the last couple of weeks? But whether it's football stadium, how you feeling about football? How you feeling about Tech, Joey?
I mean, in general, I've been okay with the way that this offseason has gone specific to Georgia Tech. I like the things that I've seen and heard from Brent Key, especially the late recruiting surge has been kind of encouraging here.
Notable.
That's been a big deal. I am cautiously optimistic about the team going into this fall, and we'll get into that. I think that, there is definitely, though, a layer of burnout as maybe just like a college football fan at large. Like, not that the offseason is ever like really when college football shines, but like in the past, it just seems like it was a lot more tolerable, a lot different than now, when every year it is just constant conversations about who's moving conferences and what's the TV contract going to turn into and what rivalries can we kill next. Like that stuff is exhausting, and it just bugs me to no end. And that's the kind of thing that just, I don't want to talk about that, man. I want to talk about the fun, goofy stuff that happens on the field when you put 18 to 22-year-old guys out there with a oddly shaped ball, and you just never know, right? And it's, I think it's the things like that, the Georgia Tech going 3-9 in 2015, but one of their 3 wins is knocking off an undefeated, like lengthy conference winning streak Florida State team on a blocked field goal run back for a touchdown. Like that's the good stuff, man. Like that's
why I'm here, man. Like, literally.
Yeah.
That's why I watch college football and not the NFLs, because that stuff doesn't happen in the NFL. It's not as much, it's not as goofy and not as much fun in that way, So I think in general, again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I like so many of the things that I've heard and seen from Brent Key, and we'll get into that. But so I think that was probably more so where my burnout is with college football at large. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's kind of how I was feeling too. It's a little bit different, a little bit sad, and you can only read about the Pac-12 media deal or know that all those great rivalries are ending soon, or Big 12.
Well, and it's
so many times, right?
Right. It's been really comforting too, though, seeing like some of the involvement of Angel Cabrera. He has been the fact that you have a school president who is very supportive of an AD who looks like he's got some great ideas. He's putting some great things in motion. Like there is a reason for optimism, I think, about this program and about Tech athletics in general that I haven't really felt for a couple of years now. So that's been pretty uplifting too, I think, over the last, 8 months, basically.
Yeah, no, I mean,
he's tweeting about tennis today too. I love it.
Yeah, no, he's out there supporting Eubanks and his hometown guy in Alcaraz. I mean, both Spanish dudes. So I mean, he's out there. He's paying attention, and he knows. When I interviewed him, what was it, 2 years ago now? At this point, like he mentioned that that's our biggest marketer. Like there at no point, like the fact that there was the guy in Eubanks' box, I don't know his name, but was wearing full Georgia Tech gear. That's the biggest free ad Tech has gotten since the last time we played a national television game in anything. They were millions.
I was going to ask, who was that? I noticed that today.
I don't remember his name.
Kevin King.
Okay, Kevin King.
Kevin
Okay,
King.
gotcha.
You think tennis coach?
Yeah, tennis guy.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, like that stuff's huge, and they know to take advantage of that. Like they're smart about that now, and finding ways to do that are big. Also at the same time, like basketball also like sneakily did okay recruiting wise too, which you mentioned in the past before. But to speak to alignment, both things moving arguably in the same direction here. And even on Instagram today, I heard Joey Votto say his favorite basketball player growing up was Damon Stoudemire until Vince Carter. But like they're making they're just figuring out how to get involved and be relevant. Which I think the effort was there in the past with some people that we are no longer big fans of. But it feels real. Like it doesn't feel like there's an artificial layer of hype going on here. It's like, no, we're just doing the work and we're going to do it well.
I've been subtweeting our friends who talk about alignment a lot, and Georgia Tech not having it, because I think that Angel's really been keyed in on that since he got here, and I think the past year has really reinforced that, and that's been heartening at least.
It's a huge deal. To bring it back to football a little bit, I did want to mention the one thing that I found. I think it's interesting. I don't know if it's like the best thing. I don't know if it's the worst thing about the recruiting class that they're working on is like there is a pretty heavy influence on out of state guys.
There is, yeah.
There's a nice little contingent coming from Louisiana. There's guys from I think there's one from Texas maybe. There's definitely a couple from South Carolina. Just kind of like an interesting data point for me. And it kind of goes along with something I think we've probably talked about in the past is like Georgia Tech almost seems like it's more respected or more it's got more positive outlook at times in guys out of state rather than in state, which it's a public school, all that. I get that. But like at the same time, like wherever you can get your guys, go get them.
Yeah.
Like if, hopefully you got the support of the in-state coaches, and it does. I feel like I've read a number of things that Brent Key does have some good support from the high school coaches in Georgia, which is obviously very necessary. But, if the best guys you can get come from out of state, Go get them.
I mean, that's what the big teams do. I mean, Bama does not recruit just from Bama. Ohio State does not recruit just from Ohio State. They get the guys from here. They get the guys. I mean, Florida's a hotbed as well. They get the guys from California. Just wherever they can get them, they get them. They maybe also may speak just the fact it's the Tech name, regardless if it's a sport or if you're taking it from a sport perspective, history perspective, or academic perspective. It's a name. You don't just like ignore that off the cuff if you know what is being said under the name when you say Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go. I'm going to read off some of these names. This is the reinforcements for this. So these are 2024 recruits. Just speaking to a potential future Brent Key is building. I think we could probably all agree that there's only so much this year's roster could really do. Granted, the transfer portal has been lively all across the place. But we'll get more into that later. But we've got a good list of 4 stars here. Troy Stevenson, who's going to play corner from Charleston. Isaiah Canyon, who I knew was a big recruit from Warner Robins. He was a 4-star. I think Troy was like the 3rd ranked guy out of South Carolina. A lot of defensive linemen. I think 3 of them have committed. Landon Marshall, Jordan Boyd, and C.J. Jackson. C.J. is from Tucker, Georgia, 3-star defensive lineman. And Tucker has put out, of all the Metro Atlanta, Georgia high schools, they put out a lot of good teams. So it's really nice to see someone from right down the, like, literally, like, you just drive down Ponce and you end up at Tucker High School eventually. So that's a huge get. And then speaking of people from outside the area, Kobe Young, a 4-star wide receiver from Holy Cross High School in Louisiana. Christian Pritchett just signed. He's a safety from, I think, New Orleans or somewhere else in Louisiana, another 3-star. We got Luke Harpring, Matt's kid from Marist, another Atlanta guy, to play tight end in what might be a pretty good tight end group. That we know there's going to be some focus there. There's Texas guy mentioned, Graham Knowles, as a quarterback option in the future. Probably not next year, depending on how, I mean, who knows how things shake up. We don't even know who our quarterback is now, which that's a later question for today. Trajan Greco was a huge get from Houston, Georgia, 3-star. He's listed as an athlete/corner, so maybe the Tobias Oliver plays everything, whatever he wants kind of thing. So those are the guys that are big out there. There might be more names that I missed, but it feels odd to be like, oh, crap, we really have like a recruiting class that needs to be talked about. It's like top 30 right now, I think, and then there's still more down the line. So, but yeah, I guess how do we feel about this too?
I worry. I always get a little skeptical when you see, like, right now in mid-July, we've got a class that's, like on the fringe of the top 25, and it's like we can feel good about that, but like part of that is just a numbers game with the way that they calculate those things out. True. It's like, let's see what it's ranked in January or whatever. Yeah, but like, yeah. I mean, a heavy volume of these guys are like the high-end 3-star into 4-star guys that it speaks to better depth than I think we saw in a majority of Jeff Collins classes, as well as even going back to a lot of the later Paul Johnson classes. So, it's all hype right now before we've got a full game or a full season under the belt of this coaching staff. But looks good, feels good to me right now.
Yeah, it feels like just the base. This taught me more than anything that the base reputation of Tech wasn't as damaged as it maybe had been, and that it was fixable with a coaching staff that were going to take care of the program and could commit to something that was a lot more fruitful than what had happened in the past, which I think for me and Jake will speak to much better game-going experiences soon. And I mean, I think I spoke. It seems like ticket numbers have gone up too. So like, so there's momentum here.
I have gotten that vibe, given that I've had to chat with them a couple times about my men's basketball and my volleyball renewals. I've always been like, what vibes? Nothing on record, of course, but they seem to be in a good mood. So that's always good to hear.
It's good.
One more name, Aaron Philo, Bogart, Georgia, another quarterback in that 3 to 4-star range. So
I was going to mention that's also a name that I haven't read a whole lot of any of these names, but that is a name that I have read a little bit about, and I think there's reason to be excited there. That seems like a guy with a lot of potential.
That would be good to know. That's going to be helpful going forward. Pyron's he's going to be a sophomore, junior this year?
I think he's a redshirt freshman.
Redshirt
freshman.
Oh,
coming off the broken collarbone.
I'm just gonna set the line at over under one of these various quarterbacks I've named. It will not be at Georgia Tech in the next couple of years, just based on how things roll out and opportunities elsewhere. But hey, maybe it'll work out. Who knows? A good quarterback room's a good quarterback room, nonetheless.
I mean, stats say that like 3 of them are going to end up in the transfer portal. So,
yeah, you just
sorry.
No,
Not being
I mean,
a downer. Not
no,
being
I
a
mean,
downer.
that's true. I mean, that's why I mentioned it. It's like, I mean, if you're gonna have this many talented guys, there's only one quarterback spot in the field that ever gets used. No one's innovated the 2 quarterback offensive system yet that puts them both on the field at the same time, despite our best efforts to play 2 in the same game last year. So I want to go
3 on 1 drive. Thanks, Jeff Collins.
Oh my goodness gracious. All right, let's go to this main meaty part here, which is I think the best we can address the team right now, just because we haven't played any games. That we had the spring game, but that's kind of it. Practices are starting soon, so I want to get through some bigger questions. First, do we have a sense of what the floor of this team is? When I've talked with people, it's felt like 3 just feels like the. I mean, I don't think we can rule out 3 wins again just because there's so many unknowns here, but it feels like 3 feels like a huge disappointment, less than that's what's expected.
I would say 3 would be the floor in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I mean, it's a tough schedule. I mean, they've been like a 3-win team for the majority of the last 4 years.
Yeah.
To me, I feel like they have underperformed the talent level pretty significantly over that stretch. And so, yeah, I mean,
and that will lose you the toss-up games too. Like that's where you go slip from 5 to 3 really, really quickly.
Right. I was going to say, then if you have, one of the quarterbacks get injured and then the other one just kind of doesn't really work out, and you have some defensive issues, especially kind of maybe in that linebacker core. Right. Like if things just really don't break well, I could see maybe another 3-win season.
Yeah.
But I would struggle to see it any worse than that.
Yeah, that's better. Well, it's not great to feel that. It's just like, well, something out of our control gets us to 3 is what it is. I think the feeling here. I mean, if you look at the schedule, Louisville, who knows, South Carolina State, and fingers crossed we don't get Citadel again, but I think we'll be all right at home at Bobby.
Why would you even say that, Jeff?
Buddy? I watched Super Bowl 51. At this point, jinxing and everything, it just doesn't matter to me anymore. I feel nothing when I say things like that.
We talked about this during the golf championship, sir.
It still doesn't matter to me.
There are people listening to this driving that are like trying to stay in their lane, trying to keep their eyes open.
I'm sorry. Let me give you some more hope here. Bowling
Green. I'm gonna have to listen back to this at work in like 2 days, and I'm just gonna be all flustered again.
Oh boy!
Come on.
Do you want me to tell you a loss? We played Georgia. Does that make you feel better?
No, that doesn't make me feel better either.
I mean, had them beat through 25 minutes last year.
We really did.
Talk about that.
That was kind of insane that happened. Yeah, we beat Clemson and Georgia at longer than we should have this past year. Which I'm looking at our schedule up now. 2 of our last 3 are Clemson and Georgia this year, which puts us in the unique situation to possibly upend some ranking stuff if we're doing okay. If by that point we come into Clemson after playing Bowling Green, Miami, and off week, Boston College, North Carolina, and Virginia, I would give us a fighting chance in all of those games. And that's 5-6 games right there.
It's why you play the games, because going into the Virginia game, the Thursday night game, I think most people would say that we had a fighting chance or better to win that game, right? And we all know what happened there.
Yep.
Even the Miami game, which turned out to be not particularly close. I think that's being charitable. Really. But then at the same time, you have a Virginia Tech game in which Tech was trailing pretty significantly late in that game, a UNC game where, well, Josh Downs, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have Brent Key.
Yep.
And again, maybe that comes out in the wash, right? Maybe we play a little bit better in the other 2 and lose the BP, ISU, and the UNC games. Like it's just why they play the games, and whether it's the number 1 team in the country, which. Knowing how Clemson and UGA are, maybe Clemson's not number 1 material this year, but we could very well face a top 2 team twice in 3 weeks. But then again, that's the schedule. That's what we've signed up for. It's a part of having a competitive schedule. It's maybe not something that people have given us a lot of credit for in the past, playing in the ACC Coastal, but I mean, the Coastal's gone. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we'll see. Louisville, winnable. Wake Forest is always pretty high quality under Dave Doran. I mean, Joey, you're the basketball conference guy. Like that, you know this as much as anyone. I'm preaching to the choir here, but again, it's why they play the games. I think we have a fighting chance in a lot of them. I think.
Well, Well, you
starting
mentioned Clemson and Georgia in 3 weeks. Well, the team they play in between is Syracuse.
Yeah.
Who knows if Dino Babers is still the head coach by late November?
Right.
We've said that for 3 years now, so I mean, who knows? But like,
Yep.
you know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's still
you could find another Sean Tucker. You know,
it's still an ACC schedule. There's a lot of who knows, because we're not Clemson and we're not Florida State on a good year, or Miami on a great year. So,
but my point there being is that a lot of pundits, national media don't really give the ACC a lot of shake, but you wind up with teams like Tech playing Clemson, playing UGA, playing competitive quality, Wake, or I get that VT's not on the schedule this year, but a Virginia Tech, a Miami, like Florida State. I mean, they're figuring to be pretty good this year. Like, this is the components of a conference that will be tested. And I think that before we move on, at least too far, I do want to state that I think my floor is 4 wins at the very least, just out of simple high variance. I mean,
right.
And I elect also not to be a downer. Like, I feel like I've been a downer on this team for so long. Maybe I'm crazy, but you flip enough coins enough times, and given some of the games that are on our schedule, you bake a couple in there. I think they win another 1 or 2 on top of that, and you're cooking from there. You're fighting for a bowl, and I think that's a reasonable, maybe not expectation. I feel like that's a little much for a first year staff, but certainly a possibility.
Yeah, we're still in a hope stage for sure.
Well, and I was going to mention too, I mean, if we're talking about the floor, the one thing that I cannot get over that has stuck with me as much as anything from last season was watching that team. I believe UCF was the last game under Collins.
Yep.
And then it was like Monday that he was announced to be fired. And on Saturday, they traveled to Pittsburgh. And so they've only had maybe
a good team.
Yeah, a solid reigning division champions, aggressively competent, ranked, physical, everything. Yeah. You travel, go on the road, play them. You've had maybe 4 practices, maybe, with Brent Key running the show, and just how drastically different that team looked, how confident and competent they looked after almost no time at all. To me, when I think about the floor, I feel like they may have lost games down the stretch last year. They may have won in a slightly fluky fashion, but at least they were in that game.
They were in games, and we had fluky quarterback injury stuff. Like that always ruins the equation.
Duke went 9-3, and one of their losses was to Georgia Tech. I cannot think that the floor is particularly low if Brent Key and whatever his methods in practice, whatever his coaching staff is doing, if they are able to drive that level of competence, the absolute floor is maybe 3 wins, but I see what Jake's saying about 4 maybe being a more reasonable absolute floor if all things break wrong.
And that's the thing too. He did that not picking his guys. He did that not picking his coaches. He did that with really no influence on how they came up through the playbook. And I mean, I guess he was, he's still a coach. It's not like he was just like some guy that was like at practice every day. Like he was a coach, but it wasn't his team. And
had at least 1, if not 2 quarterback injuries there, like guys getting knocked out.
Didn't they start like Ty Pumachan against UGA?
Oh yeah,
I think he played in the game at least. Yeah, there was way more.
Gibson or Pumachan,
there was way more
Pumachan.
Either way, there was more Pumachan than we really wanted to have happen last year. That was no one. I mean, that was just the fault of bad luck on injury there. Like that's just how that played out. But yeah, I mean, between let's shift to the ceiling then, which is my next natural follow-up question. I'm looking at the schedule. If you tell me between every game that isn't Ole Miss, Clemson, and Georgia, that's just 3 games that we're gonna have a fighting chance at 9 of these, I totally believe you. I absolutely believe you here. We get North Carolina at home, and I don't know if they'll be preseason ranked or not, but like that seems great. Boston College at home. That feels great. Bowling Green feels great. Wake Forest, that seems like a really fun fight in Winston-Salem. I hope
Wake's in for a little bit of a reset here this year too, by the way. Like they're about as vulnerable as they've been in a number of years.
Okay, gotcha.
And we started to see cracks of that last year, I think, too. Not to get too far away from Georgia Tech in particular.
We never play more than 2 games in a row on the road, so it's not like we're like gone forever or just home forever. We got a pretty healthy back and forth there. Anyway, how many games Bobby Dodd? We got South Carolina State and Bobby Dodd, Bowling Green, Boston College, North Carolina,
It's 6. Louisville's
Syracuse,
at
and
the Benz.
yep, and then Georgia. So 7 Atlanta games, 7 of the 13. So theoretically, a home field advantage, and over half. Well, okay, I say home field advantage. I know what happened last time Georgia came here and how very mobile that fan base is at buying Bobby Dodd Stadium. So hopefully,
Jack, I got booed during my ride out in the wreck.
I'm so sorry.
Just
I know I was
putting that
there.
out there.
I was there. I heard it. So hey, I mean, hey, talk about ticket. Let's just make a service announcement now. Just buy your Georgia tickets now. Just do it. Don't if we buy them now, it'll be less red. That's just how that's gonna work out. So
And don't sell them on
Honestly,
Ticketmaster.
yeah,
I
don't
was
sell
gonna
them.
say,
Don't
it'd
sell
be
them
better
either.
to just let it go empty. Like,
Yeah, let it go empty or come message us. We will find people to go. I excel in that department of various sports logistics. So
Jack will personally commit to
I will-
buying it so it
I
in
will
fact goes
get-
empty.
I will get you. I will
I'm
get
kidding.
you a buyer that went to Georgia Tech. Don't you worry.
On that note, true story. There was one year that I bought like a 3-game pack of tickets, and one of the games I bought was for the Georgia game. And then my parents also, like for my birthday, got me tickets to the Georgia game. And so I had an extra pair, and I was going to sell them. And I found there was this girl that I went to school with who was going to buy them from me. And then I did a little snooping and realized she wanted to take her sister, who was like a Georgia grad.
Oh.
And I was like, I found someone else to buy them actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she was pissed, and it was like worth it.
Eh, well,
One less Georgia fan in the stands.
That's
Exactly.
always the way to go there. But yeah, so ceiling 9, 10,
8.
8 does feel more reasonable. Yeah.
So
my general practice is to take the number of games I think we have a reasonable chance in, which this year I feel is 8, and add one to it. Actually, no, 9, and add one to it. So I'll say 10, which feels really, really unrealistic.
That's the far end of
But-
the variability spectrum there.
I don't think we have much of a chance of UGA, Clemson, Ole Miss, but
I would say I look at it, and again, from a ceiling standpoint, I'm thinking about this in terms of like how many games will Georgia Tech be like a big underdog in, right? Like they're already underdogs against Louisville. They will be underdogs at Ole Miss, at Clemson, and home against Georgia.
yeah.
Of the other 8 games, though, I mean, I can make an argument that they might be favored in like six of them.
Yeah, the only ones that we may not be are what, at Miami and
Wake
home
at
against North
home.
Carolina, or at Wake. So
Yeah, especially early in the season, they might be underdogs on the road at Wake, but they
Yeah,
can
that makes
absolutely win
sense.
that game.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Might well be underdogs at Miami on the road, especially if Miami's improved this year. And then we'll see what North Carolina is by the end of October.
But
But
that's far enough down the line. Who knows?
you'll be favored against South Carolina State, Bowling Green, Boston College, at Virginia, and Syracuse, I think, unless somebody turns into something that I really don't expect them to be.
Right.
Like that's 5 games right there that you probably should win.
Yeah.
So, I struggle to think that they're going to get past everyone that I think that they should. I think everything breaks totally right. This is probably like an 8-win team. But yeah, I struggle to see any more than that. But I'm kind of with you guys. I mean, I think there's 9 fully winnable games on this schedule.
Right. Yeah. When was the last time we said that?
2018.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got to this site, I would say that my ceiling every year in the what will Georgia Tech's high end prediction be was 12-0. And after about 2 or 3 years, I realized that was really naive of me.
Hey, I mean, you weren't wrong. That is always the ceiling.
And not that I'm gonna say that I'm like, oh, I'm ready to do that again just for the clicks in the comments and stuff. But I mean, this is probably the highest I've felt on a team since I don't know, the year before Paul, retired.
Yeah.
But-
No, I think that's fair.
It was 16 that they went 9-4. They went they went and won the Gator Bowl against Kentucky.
Yeah.
And
I was a
then-
very
then-
spoiled freshman that year, Joe.
Then that quick lane bowl.
I was a freshman in 2009. Don't tell me about being a spoiled freshman.
Oh yeah, never mind. You might be the only person I can talk to who it was more spoiled than me. So, oh man.
To go next question. Based on how the recruiting's gone, and I guess just the general better vibes around the thing, I kind of went to this earlier, but does it feel like we're understanding what the actual market demand is for Georgia Tech as a football product compared to how in demand we were in the last couple of years. Like this, like I feel like I'm seeing, okay, maybe we aren't as just tossed to the side as I thought we were, just because that's just what I experienced as a hefty Tech fan, and we're getting to see what the actual reality probably is supposed to be for us.
I think it can get a little bit better. I mean, keep in mind this is a team that hadn't gone to a bowl game in 4 years, right? And you're seeing this. So there is still like an element that they're selling hype. I think if you start selling a little bit of substance even, and I mean, Brent Key was the head coach for 8 games last year, and they won 5 of them, right?
Yeah, that was the first bit of substance. Yeah, we won 4, but like that's the first bit of substance we had felt. So like there was no hype then, and at that point it was no hype and just unforeseen substance basically, and now that's turned into some hype.
So I think it can get better. I don't know how much better. I've always had my reservations about like what is the actual peak of Georgia Tech's recruiting capabilities with all sorts of various built-in factors that no coach, no AD even might even be able to change. But I think there is something to be said. I mean, I've read a couple of these like commitment interviews and some of the comments that guys are making about, no, these coaches are just being real with me. They're being very honest about, well, not everybody makes it in the NFL. And it kind of probably helps that you have a guy who, is an alumnus of the program. I don't think he ever made it to the NFL, but now is a very successful coach, right? And you've got a guy like Marco Coleman who did make the NFL, So I think some of that maybe is at play, but I think there's something to it. Yeah, when you're talking to people like men and not like you're trying to be like social media influencers just like them or whatever. Like,
I mean, it's a program that is very grounded in reality. I think based on what Key said when he came out and had his introductory press conference, like it didn't sound like he said it was in the clouds. Like he knew exactly how dirty they were going to get and how much sweat was going to get into this to make it good.
I think that's what I missed from Paul most, was just the grounded reality. It felt like he was shooting us straight, even though we were just listening to a radio interview or press conference or
which fits with just what Tech is too. Like just in general, like the vibes around campus are not, oh my God, we're in college and it's like we're just in some wonderful paradise. Like no, it's hard. You have your people, you have your struggles. It's going to be like that.
You got your future always in mind,
and you got everyone knows they're going to get something good should come out of getting that Georgia Tech degree. I mean, it's obviously nothing's a guarantee, but the future is way better for you than it could otherwise be, and you're set up. And so being at Tech, even if you don't make it in football, you can still be set up really well, which is going to be the case for most of these guys.
Jack, have I ever told my like one Brent Key story on here or no?
I have no idea.
All right, well, I'll do it. I'll keep it short. So the football team, the spring after Jeff Collins was hired and put together a staff, put out to like student leaders who were like in the database of presidents and treasurers and secretaries and stuff to do a tour of the facilities hosted by Jeff Collins.
You have to do this off air.
Yes. So. I was going to say, and we all showed up and we were standing outside. It was cold. I was wearing a scarf and a hat. And I don't usually admit Atlanta weather was cold, but we were all standing outside of the building, locked out because there was a no-show by the guy who's supposed to lead the tour. And Brent Key saw that we were standing out there, or the secretary or somebody with the team saw we were standing out there. Brent Key had the time and just took an hour out of his day. Granted, it was February, so it wasn't like it was like game week and they were getting stuff ready. Hour out of his day to give us a tour and then sat us all down in the film rooms, auditorium thing that they've got. It was just like, ask questions. What do you got? And then took a picture of all of us at the end and said, have a great day. And I've had a great impression of him since. And when you say that recruits are saying that he is shooting them straight, I have every confidence that that is what he was doing, because he seems very down to earth, very practical, and, just very candid. That seems like the way he runs his program from the outside now, because it seems like that's how he ran his life, even when he was just the O-line coach and just a guy who cared a lot. So if now's the time to say that story, if there's ever a time to tell that story, it's now, because it seems like it's a good bridge from what we're seeing coaching staff and, what they're saying to recruits versus, how is he going to get this program put together as we look towards the start of the season, week one and stuff like that. Because that's the attitude I like to see at least.
What I've heard and kind of read some of too is that he seems like a guy who just legitimately loves Georgia Tech. And like, this is the only place that he wants to be. Like, he would be more than happy to be here as long as we'll have him, if things are going well, basically. And you never say never, because if things go well enough, somebody's going to put a check in front of him that's bigger than anything Georgia Tech could get close to. Yeah. And, who knows what happens then. That would be a great case scenario, honestly, if we get there.
Speaks great of us. Yeah. Makes us attractive too for whoever comes next. So.
Yep. But yeah, just a guy who is just thrilled to be here, wants to share that with as many people. We'll sit there and listen to him, so I think that's a great sign.
And anything that we didn't see go right last year that we think that they need to focus on in terms of before the season starts?
Oh, you're asking?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh boy. Special teams. I feel like that doesn't need to go said, but special teams. Gavin. Hey, we started the Gavin Stewart fan club. I mean, I think he was definitely a better option to come down the line there. But no, I mean, there was games with Mr. Collins where you just did not know what was going to happen on the kickoff or punt return or anything like that. Like, that was just a scary play. That should never be a scary play for football reasons. It should be that's an injury play, but outside of that, so I assume that's if he missed that, then what the heck? I mean, I assume they've been all over that. Didn't they not have proper special teams training going on in the first place? I thought I heard something that was a very good instigator of why they just weren't good at special teams in the first place.
I can't even remember what I've heard and what was fact and what was fiction at this point. Some
of
the stories,
all of it was believable though, probably, which is a problem too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is it's kind of a big thing to say, but I would say the passing game on offense, really, and it's there's kind of an unsettled quarterback situation. I think there's a lot of unproven lack of snaps together within the receiving core and the tight ends. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot there that is very unsettled if you just look at previous production, I would say.
Right.
I think that's a big thing to work on, getting in sync in fall camp here as we work into the preseason, basically.
Yeah, quarterback support. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask who starts quarterback week 1. I mean, we don't really know right now. It seems like Pyron's the leader in the clubhouse right now, but there's still so much left to even. There's practices still to do. Who knows if Haynes is making his leap right now of all times, or if Gibson's making his leap right now of all times. There's plenty. This is July 10. We don't kick off for I closed the tab. Crap. I mean, it's a while. We don't kick off for a while here. So it's
80-something days.
80-some days. Yeah, that's enough.
8 weeks. I don't know. There's some 8-something is what I saw.
I think it was 50 days. 50 days to week 0, and we play week 1. So yeah, somewhere that. Yeah. Closer to
8 weeks. There we go.
Yeah, about 8 weeks to go, and we have the early week game there too. So.
From what I've heard, yeah, I mean, Pyron, it sounds like Pyron's currently the leader in the clubhouse. Either way, I can't imagine it would be anybody but him or King, right? It'll be one of those two.
Right, yeah.
The comforting thing to me is that whichever one starts, the backup clearly has a lot of talent too. So, it's not like everything is doom and gloom if the starter goes down, I don't think.
Yeah.
I'll say that. But
yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
I will say that kind of my calling out of the passing game is maybe even part of a even bigger trend that I would say is if I had to sum up how am I feeling about this team overall, or how would I summarize this team overall at this point going into fall camp, I would say it's a lot of unproven potential. You've got a lot of guys, they're transferred from elsewhere, guys that came in, that have good recruiting rankings, maybe that were injured in previous years, but you don't have a lot of snaps at a lot of different places. And again, I think about the passing game on offense, especially. I think about a number of spots on defense, especially in the linebacking group. There's a lot of, it seems like it should go well, but we haven't seen it all mesh just yet. And so I think that's the way that I'm kind of approaching this is again, cautiously optimistic is there's a lot of guys with a lot of talent that we think a lot of, but we haven't seen them play together and produce really yet going into this year.
Right, yeah, it's insightful because what we saw the NCAA men's basketball, but like every Final Four team was of the most experienced teams in the tournament at that point. Like, yeah, you need time to gel. Like, that's just a general thing in sports outside of baseball where it's one person at a time. The parts are there. Do they work together? We don't know. Hopefully they will. They showed some signs that they can last year, so it's not like we're throwing them off already in the first place. And they've got 2 games up front that are going to be super exciting in a Mercedes-Benz game, and then the Bobby Dodd home opener against an FCS team. So it's like they're going to have a proving ground there to make things work. I would assume I would think of any game, if we're going to see both King and Pyre in that South Carolina State game, would be that game just functionally. You can maybe game plan. I don't know how they game plan or what they're going to do there, but like if I'm going to bet on a game where that happens, it would be that one. So we might have. I mean, maybe they use the Louisville game as the test case. They do one half if they're really not sure, and if they just can tell there's some, I mean, who knows? This is all hypothetical.
That
right
seems
now.
like a big game to go in with,
Yeah, no, I mean that probably all depends on really what happens in the moment more than anything, and not what happens before. Assuming no injuries and stuff like that.
But you guys mentioned, I mean, the like dual thing that they did against Georgia last year, coming out with kind of a wacky game plan. I mean, it worked, right? For a while. Like
against them specifically, like who else are you gonna like? You may as well throw the kitchen sink out. Like, it's Georgia. You got no other game to play that year. There's nothing left to throw. I mean, you're not playing anybody else, and they're the best team out there. You may as well see what throws them off kilter.
Well, yeah. I mean, my point being, like, we've seen Brent Key teams come out with an unconventional game plan, something that we just really didn't expect, and it had some success. So, yeah. I guess never say never with any sort of wacky ideas we might talk about right now, what they might try. Who knows?
Sure. I would expect Georgia Tech, of all innovative schools, to be the ones to solve some sort of funky scheme or game plan that just no one sees coming. And I mean, hey, we have the important games to do that with. If Clemson is the Clemson of that they have been, and they're a top 10 team come that game, and Georgia's Georgia again, like, and we figured out something. Like, those are, I remember 2 years ago when we had the Notre Dame and Georgia games back to back. I'm like, well, we're the only team playing 2 top 5 teams in back to back weeks. Sadly, it was that version of Georgia Tech that couldn't exactly upend anything, but Tech is uniquely situated by their schedule to make severe impacts in the college football world, which is just, I'm thinking about it now, like in that marketing sense of like, you have a scheduling chance here to make a serious name for ourselves and put us on the map again, like how we did against Florida State there. That got Jake here right now. So, of all years to make that happen, I'm excited to hopefully make that happen. The last line item here we have is any hot takes to fire off before we go. Mine is we need to bring the honeycomb helmet back. I want it. It's a great dome. We're the only ones that can pull it off properly. And we did pull it off well.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we had that same FSU game in the honeycomb helmet. So, like, come on.
I was a fan.
Yeah.
Jake?
Billy, you got one?
I'll throw one out there. I said on a podcast a few months ago, if you're looking to bet teams to win the ACC, that Clemson and Florida State are the 2 obvious picks. The only other one I would maybe be interested in is in Louisville because the way that their schedule sets up. I think they avoid both Clemson and Florida State, and it's like the chance that they could get to Charlotte and then win a 1-game scenario. Yeah, I might take my chances on that.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech opening against Louisville.
Best case scenario.
Right now, I'm seeing yes, absolutely it is. Right now, I'm seeing Louisville as an 8-point favorite in that game. If you can get Georgia Tech getting more than a touchdown in that spot, I think I like that. I think there is a non-zero chance. I think that Georgia Tech wins that game on the field. That we're hyping up Louisville a bit too much for game 1 for something that we haven't seen before. That we are underrating Georgia Tech. Everyone talking about. I hear enough national media talking about Georgia Tech being like the 12th best team in the ACC, and I'm like, I don't think y'all are paying attention. They're going to be better than that.
Yeah.
And, so if you can get a good number on Georgia Tech in that opening game, I'd go for it. I like their chances there.
Louisville plays 2 neutral site NFL stadium games this year. They play Indiana and Lucas Oil in week 3.
That's a dub. Wow, we're getting all the Grant family matchups except the Indiana Georgia Tech one. I don't think that's ever happened before. That's wild. But in terms of a terms of a hot take, my hot take is we will go bowling. Period.
I like that.
Like it,
I feel like
I
that's
know
just.
that
I
it
feel
seems
like
like
that's.
it's a.
I mean,
Like,
it feels warm less than it feels hot. Like I know to be cautiously optimistic here because of track
But
record and
every-
everything, but it's like I'm not
every
dissuaded by
piece
that.
of media is that, to Joey's point. Like, I don't know what some of these people are what, like, we have no clue what Syracuse is going to do. We have no clue what Virginia is going to do. We have no clue that Boston College, no indication that Boston College is going to be substantially improved.
I mean, I will say, I think we've earned the lack of faith the media is giving us right now based on our recent track record. I mean, it's not.
Jeff Collins did.
I mean, Jeff did, yes. I mean, I'll repeat the same thing I did, is that Josh Downs just, we said it earlier, like, we're one basket catch drop away from who knows who's head coach. Who knows how that all shakes out. But
the Pittsburgh win wasn't a fluke.
Pittsburgh was,
Game,
I don't
that
think, no, it was
a
not.
good win against a quality team.
Yeah.
Like, if we're just going to relitigate the Downs thing, like, you could, again, that's why you play the games. And again, it's a long off season, but like,
Yeah.
I think my hot take, and it sucks that this is a hot take, but we will go bowling. I'm going to not hedge my terms. I think, kind of bring us all together, it is very possible for us to do more than just the minimum. It's very possible for us to do under the minimum, but I think it feels like a weird thing to say it's a hot take, and it's weird to say that that's something that has to be said as a hot take for a team that went to, what was it, 24 bowls in 25 years or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. High variety here is probably the name of the game until we play the games and we see what the variety actually is.
So Jack, bet the over on the season win total.
I like that idea. What is do we know, is that out there yet? Is that I'll assume Joey's looking at that.
I'm looking for it.
While he's looking at it, I'll mention that our position previews have been being published and coaching previews have been being published on our website from therumbleseat.com for the last month-ish at this point. So we have a lot of content there if you want to get quick little recaps on, or just previews on all the positions and everything like that. And we'll have more complete season preview, at least on the podcast, in August, closer to the Louisville game. I don't remember what's on our 100 days to kick to football part leading up to. I think we'll have. I think what's next is we have opponent previews. I know that's coming, so that'll be something to look forward to.
Win total I'm seeing is 4.5, which is about the high end of where I'd be interested in betting it.
Okay.
If you see 5, I just leave it alone.
Yeah. So
if you see 4, go for it.
5. Okay.
Over.
5 doesn't. Yeah. I feel I feel like I feel more comfortable than I should be with 4.5.
Over 4.5 at plus 115 for whatever.
Oh,
it's
well,
worth.
okay. Well, 115. Okay. Well, there.
Plus money.
Yeah. Okay. It's at least plus money, but 115 is also only so much money. So, okay, that makes sense here. Jake, take us into this next a little bit.
Joey, I got a question for you.
Sure.
And I know that it's never good to ask a question that you don't already know the answer to when you're on the spot in a podcast. But have you ever heard of the company Section 103?
Section 103. Is that the internet's premier? Gosh, I'm out of my game. I lost my read here. I believe they're the company that made the shirt that I'm wearing right now, actually.
We got the biggest celebrity in the endorser of Section 103 world on our podcast right now.
No. Fumbling over his words.
Yeah, well, better than football's on the field, right? Like that's the dream. But yes, I'm so glad that you wore your Section 103 shirts to this podcast. As discussed before you got on, I'm wearing a baseball shirt because it's the Home Run Derby. But when I'm not in baseball shirts, you can darn well be sure that I'm in a much more comfortable one, made usually by Section 103. Joey, the other question I had for you, I don't know if you have any insight onto this, but if you've got any sneak peeks, we're all ears for potential new releases. But if you hear anything, our listeners would love to know. But in the meantime, all I've been seeing from them lately is the clearance rack, which is a great place to get a great deal on Section 103 shirts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Yes. They've got all sorts of wonderful things on that website. We begged for years, like, can I just get the basic logos on shirts? And for some reason, Adidas and Russell and Nike and, take your pick of anyone else, Cutter and Buck, whatever. None of them could make that happen. But Section 103 made it happen. It's high quality. Everything looks great, officially licensed. It is everything you have ever wanted from Georgia Tech apparel.
Yes. I've had that North Avenue Trade School crew neck on my list with the new seal. Don't see that in many places yet on my list for a long time. I know that's not the just basic GT at Georgia Tech on a shirt, but I'm a sucker for the kind of vintagey looking stuff. And I say this all the time, but I even get comments from opposing fans on it. And if that's not a ringing endorsement for Steven and the gang, I don't know what is, right?
As a rapidly aging man too, I am well familiar with the Junior's Grill shirt. It is good looking. If you're an OG, OGs know about Junior's Grill. They got one of those shirts paying tribute on Section 103. Go do that.
GTGs know too, right?
That's right. That's a little bit before my time, actually, it turns out. But
me too. As always, you can find them section103.com at section103 on Twitter. And we are always proud to be talking about them because they make great stuff. That being said, I will pivot us to our historic question of the week that needs a segment name that I still have yet to think of. Those who are frequent listeners of the podcast will remember my Danny Hall question about what percentage of Georgia Tech baseball games all time he has coached. Well, this week's follow-up, it's a pretty obvious follow-up, if I do say so myself. But, gents, I want you to take a guess, just a stab in the dark. What percentage of all-time Georgia Tech games in match play sports, so that's your tennises, basketballs, volleyballs, baseball, softball, basketball, football, no swimming because they still won't send me dual meet results, and no golf because it's a pain to do that by hand because that's the only one that broke my PDF converter. So the standard match play sports, what percentage of all-time Georgia Tech head-to-head sporting events has Danny Hall specifically been the manager for?
So let's extrapolate the fact that he's at 41% of.
And Joey, for reference, he has coached 41% of all time Georgia Tech baseball games, in case we didn't tell you that earlier.
Okay, good to know.
41% of the sport with the most games. I assume they have the most games at this point. Yeah, because they started early enough. They had to have. Yeah. Okay, so they have the most games.
They also play probably about the longest schedule of all those sports. So just a high percentage of the games that have been played in general are baseball games.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go 8%.
Okay.
8's good. 8's good.
Figured 11 might be a little too high.
I think that was the number I was actually thinking. I think 11 was where I was landing because it's like basketball's the other big one, and then football just by longevity.
Softball plays 60 games a year. Not to talk you guys out of it.
You're right. Well, how long has softball been around since? Somewhere in the 70s, 60s?
Late 70s, early
Late
80s.
70s? Okay, so I mean, baseball had a 40-year head start on them, 40, 50-year head start.
Try.
Did John Heisman
80?
coach baseball?
80, yeah.
John Heisman coached baseball, men's basketball, and football, and he was a terrible men's basketball coach. I'll tell you that. Having looked at all the results now, he was not too good.
I'm gonna go from 11. I'm gonna go down to 10.
Oh,
a solid
Jack.
10. Did I? No,
Jack. No, stay
11.
at
11.
Stay at 11.
Wow.
It's 1,808, including exhibitions, from what I can tell, including an Atlanta Braves, a couple exhibitions there, which bring that back. That's cool. That's 1,808 out of 16,045 games in my data set. That is 11.27% of all Georgia Tech, essentially, matchup, dual, whatever, head-to-head events in history.
Wow.
Would you guys say that's too many, too few?
There are some that I think would say it's too many at this point. I don't think people think that. I have thought that occasionally. I'm not all the way there yet.
I'm gonna look at what 1,758 out of 1,645 is, and that's 10.96%. I think last year might have been a good time to go.
11% is too many for a school this old. It's too many.
Roughly one season too many. Yeah, roughly.
One season too many.
Give or take a few. No, I mean he's obviously a living legend. I don't know if he gets up, 18th pitching coach or whatever he's on. Figure it out, but no. Yes, living legend. Underperformed a little bit this year. absolutely astonishing that a single person can coach 11%
That is insane.
of
That is
sporting
insane.
events. Sporting events at the
Yeah.
university,
Pure
at the
events.
institute, all
Pure
time.
events. Pure events. That's incredible. I'm sure there's got to be comps elsewhere in other schools, just with how old other schools are and how they just kept the same guy forever. So I wonder. I wonder
There
what
was a
pay.
baseball coach that retired from like Siena last year, who had been the coach since he was like 25 years old, and he was like
Oh,
77
right.
or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, you just find there's enough teams out there. You just find those kind of guys out there.
Oh,
Especially
yeah.
everyone has baseball too. So like there has to be other guys. Like there's got to be people with somewhere close to like 35, maybe 35. I don't know, 20%, something like that. So
You find a million schools with a tiny little schools with a baseball team, a basketball team, like
right.
Yeah.
And they just stay there forever, right?
That's what they do. I think that hits us to the end of this very lively. Finally, got to talk about some football. It's been too long for us. I mean, spring, obviously, there's other sports going on, but it was about time we get some football talk. Joey, thanks for coming on. Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. That was a great time. It's always fun getting to come back and join the blog crew, remembering my roots and such. Yeah, we are on Basketball Conference is the name of the podcast. It is a lovingly named podcast about the ACC's football teams in particular. Come find us there. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on a lot of places. So go find us there. YouTube as well. We would appreciate that. Come hit the subscribe button. Have fun. We talk, obviously plenty of Georgia Tech along with all the other ACC programs. So it's a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. And yeah, come join us.
I give it a ringing endorsement, of course.
Thank you.
As always, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. We publish a lot of stuff, really football, men's, women's basketball. We got some baseball, softball, volleyball, really everything under the sun. We try and get at least some of it. You can find us there. Leave comments. We'd love to hear from you. It's great, and it really shapes what we do and what we're thinking about as we go to bring you more content. You can also send us your comments directly to fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. We're getting towards the end of summer, so you're running out of time to suggest any podcast topics and things of that nature. Sorry, the summer is long, but it is also short. You can find us on Twitter at FTRS blog. You can find myself and Jack on Twitter at JakeGrant98, at Jack Nicholas. We're on Threads now too, so
we are. No, we're
start
not. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet.
We are
show
on
off.
Threads. We are on.
Oh,
Threads.
us. Oh, me and Jake are on Threads.
Yes.
Yes. I haven't gotten the From the Rumble Seat account set up yet.
Yeah, it'll be at From the Rumble Seat because thank you, Meta. They make all of them the same. You can find us Facebook and Instagram there. And like we said, soon Threads. You can find us on YouTube at From the Rumble Seat. As always, you can also find Section 103 at Section 103 and Section103.com. And you can find this podcast wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe. A bit I stole from Ian Happ at the Compound Podcast, but it's a great advice. I've let this go on way too long. Good night. Good luck. Thanks again, Joey, and go Jackets.
Go Jackets.